That's perfect. Thank you so much. So I would start with the proposal of dear participants, but given that one participant is present, I will begin with dear participant, dear Alona. This time, greetings, an official greeting from Corvinus University of Budapest, and greetings for all of the participants who will join later, seeing this recording in some days or in some weeks. My name is Tamas Bokor. I'm a deputy head of Institute at Marketing and Communication Sciences at Corvinus University of Budapest, and basically I work as a media researcher and a communication counselor, so to say, where I teach small and medium enterprises and the representatives of small and medium enterprises for communication skills. I try to develop the communication skills of businessmen, the members of the public administration, and I give trainings and I give lectures for all our students, especially in the communication and media science programs. They come from all around the world, from Brazil to China. So we have a really international environment at our university. And beside this, as a counselor, I often work with business enterprises, bigger ones or smaller ones, in the field of organizational development from the side of communication. So yeah, the basic of my job is communication all the time. And when we began this problem sorry, I'm just receiving the messages from my head of institute, but anyway, I will answer later. So when we began this project, the original idea was to prepare the future entrepreneurs, who are all women from Ukraine, basically, and who aim to start something which is inspiring, something which is interesting, and something which is relevant for their future clients. And we aimed to help them. We aimed to develop their skills in communication. And that's why we tried to define the broader context of this business communication kind of thing. And I dedicated my two occasions where I hold my lectures around two main topics. The first one is the background of a successful business presentation. Because once you will have your small venture, your small enterprise, you will have to have kind of a web page or some presence on social media sites, or both of them, a web page as well as social media contents on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, WeContact or anything else. So you will have to create, or you will have to have online content created by experts or by yourself. And I try to highlight the most important details in the field of visual communication in business presentations. So on today's occasion, I will show you some good practices and some bad examples about how to create good presentations and good creatives based on data, because data is the most important part in business communication in some way. And in the upcoming class or upcoming webinar, I would say webinar because it's more precise, we will dive deeper into an even more important field, which is the entrepreneur herself. So today you will have some homework. I will send you kind of a test in the WhatsApp group. At least I plan it to do so. And for the upcoming class, you will have to get ready with this test. So you will have to get the results of your individual test. And we will discuss this test, which measures one of the most important traits of a successful business communicator. I won't reveal this trick or this secret because I have to have something in the pocket for the next class or next webinar. But we will deal with the traits of the successful entrepreneurs, and we will observe the psychological background of how to influence people as a businessman, how to get persuasive, how to become determined, and how to seem determined in your business presentations and in your overall presence in business situations. And by this, you will be able to create your own business plan, your business strategy. And I like you to clarify your goals and your aims about your future small venture, small enterprise. So let's get back to today's topic, for which I will share my screen in order to be able to share my presentation. The title is Sense at First Sight. So that's the basic secret of a successful business presentation, to create the sense at first sight, to be hands-on for your communication partner. I will share my email address, by the way, later on, and anytime you will have any questions, feel free to write me, or you can reach out to me via the WhatsApp group, etc., etc. So I'm available during all the time of this project. So sense at first sight. Let's begin with the numbers. As I mentioned before, numbers are the magic part of doing business nowadays. You definitely have already heard about terms like big data or data business or data analysis, data science, etc., etc. It's all about the business data. Even those bigger companies like Microsoft or Apple or many more big companies have to deal with data, and they constantly develop the data analytical softwares like Power BI or even Excel in the area of the Microsoft Office universe. So to some extent, you will have to get ready to present your business data all the time, because it's one of the most important evidence for the customers. Even in marketing communication, or when you try to convince your future clients about the potential of your entrepreneurship, you will have to present your existing successes in the language of data. So you have to learn how to demonstrate your successfulness in a data-related language. And that's why I would like to give you some help about how to back up, how to wrap up all those data-driven stories to tell in a business presentation. Let's begin with some data, by the way. Once I have been talking about the importance of data, there is a rule which is often cited as the 3-click rule. As you may already have heard about it, the human perception, our perception and our attention span, so the length of the time while we can stay attentive, while we can stay focused on a particular subject or on a particular topic or on a particular person, gets shorter and shorter. The 3 clicks rule has been appeared in the science of web usability or web ergonomy, so the planning of websites and other informatical platforms. And it states that if the user cannot find the data which he or she looks for, she or he will left the website. She will leave after 3 clicks. So you have to plan everything on your future website or on your social media surface to be able to be found in 3 clicks, maximum 3 clicks. Because we are impatient, we try to be in a hurry all the time. So we don't try and don't like to waste our time with pointless searching all around the complicated web page. So simplicity is one of the key slogans now. And another thing, our attention span dropped, so it decreased during the recent years from 12 minutes to 3 minutes. And I have this weird experience all the time, every single day at the university, that our students cannot watch even an embedded YouTube video during my, lectures and classes, which is longer than 3 minutes. So if you or if my students have to watch a longer video, they try to get rid of this thing and they start to be impatient after 3 minutes. But many years ago, when I started my career at the university, it was about 14 or 15 years ago, I was able to screen more than 8 or 9 minutes long videos, and it was not a problem. But now the attention span just dropped, and it's so short that we lost our patience, and we get bored and we start something else to do while watching that video. And what about the 15 seconds? The 15 seconds rule was measured by one of the research of the IBM company, that big IT company, some years ago. I think it was measured in 2017 or 16. And it stated that our constant focusing capacity, so the time span where we can watch something and we can concentrate directly on something, is just 15 seconds or even less, let's say 12. So if you create an advertisement, for example, for your small or medium enterprise, if you create anything with a marketing purpose, an audio-visual product, you can and you must be short. You must be shorter than 15 seconds, otherwise the user loses the interest. Every time, all day, we work like this because the media environment encourages us to seek for newer and newer, things to watch, to focus on. So our focus is not that stable. We can easily be diverted by other, senses from the environment. So you have to be aware of these facts. And in the mirror of this, I must say that if we have these kind of quite long webinars, just like now we are having this, it's kind of a torture for the participants because it's way too long. The ideal would be about 12 minutes or 3 minutes, and we should start it over and over again with a new topic, not to get bored. So yeah, I have a difficult task in terms of this right now, right here. Let's move on to a second thing, which is the different forms of the human attention. When we have to pay attention to something, that can happen automatically, or it can be a kind of a controlled attention. If it happens automatically, I don't really know whether you have a driving license, but if you have the opportunity and the ability to drive cars, you can imagine what I'm speaking about. Because if you drive a car and if you have some practice in driving cars, you do it basically automatically. You don't really need to think over and over again about what to do while you drive your car. You just hit the brake uncontrolled. You don't have to think about hitting the brake if a passenger goes in front of your vehicle, in front of your car, because it's automated. It's a reflex, I would say. So it's the kind of the automatic attention. And the second thing is the controlled attention. This situation where we are now is a kind of requires a kind of a controlled attention from your side, from your participative side. And it requires the controlled attention from my side as well, because I have to be aware of my words. I have to be sober. I have to pay attention for the next slide, what I will say then, what I'm saying now. I have to remember of my previous sentences. And on your side, it's the same. You must remember of the previously mentioned things. You have to listen all the time and elaborate what I'm saying. Ideally, of course, you must not do it. But if you try to gain something from my presentation, you have to have a controlled attention. And these two forms are really different, because if you listen to a presentation or if you watch the content of a website or a social media site, you use your controlled attention, because otherwise you won't be able to elaborate the information well. However, your controlled attention has its limits. It exhausts in a short time, maybe in 12 or 15 minutes. So the controlled attention gets lazy all the time. Your controlled attention falls asleep, and for a few minutes you just switch off and you use your automatic attention. But that automatic kind of attention is not that effective in terms of the elaboration of information. So that's the point here. And don't forget about the different modalities of attention. Basically, there are two main categories. One is the acoustic, so what you receive with your ears. Just think about where you have this cocktail party effect. When you are at the party with a big noise, different people, tons of people just chatting with each other, they are speaking, they are present, and they have their conversations, and there's a noisy atmosphere, and suddenly you hear your name. And despite the fact that many people are talking at the same time, if I hear my name in the crowd, I will be attentive and I'm gonna hear that. Because my name, I'm sensitive of hearing my name from the crowd. It's the cocktail party effect. And it's an acoustic modality, an ear-related modality of the attention. You hear it by your ears. The other one is the visual modality. I'm going to show you something which is the Stroop effect. And if somebody of you have feeling like trying to read it out loud, you are allowed to try it. Would there be somebody who tries to read out these words? No, I don't think so. Nobody is that brave. No problem. Sorry?
Everyone is keeping silence, but I think maybe they will try.
Okay. It's not that
I would like to
difficult.
ask Kanu, can you help us with that?
Yes, I'm here. Okay, so I
Just
will try.
read
I
out the
like this
words.
test. Okay, so red, blue, green, yellow, green, black, blue, red, this yellow one, black,
Green.
yellow, blue, green, red, and black.
Wow, that was skillful. And now let's have a second try just with the words. Just with the words. No colors, just what is written.
Okay, me try again, yes?
Yep, okay.
Yes, purple, yellow, red, black, red, green, red, yellow, orange, blue, purple, black, red, green, orange.
That's perfect. And thank you so much. As you demonstrated, there's a big difference in the speed of these two trials, because if you just have to read out the words themselves, it's a practice. It's an automatic attention. It requires some automatism. I have been learned how to read. I have been taught how to read. I know the words, I know the letters. It's a speedy thing. Purple, yellow, red, black, red, green, red, yellow, orange. Okay, etc. However, if I have to identify the colors of these words, and they are mixed, because under purple I see red letters, and in the yellow word I see blue letters, and I try to identify the original colors of these words, it requires my controlled attention. That's the second art of, sorry, so yeah, that's what I'm speaking about. It requires the controlled attention. And as you have heard, it results in a much slower speed, because the controlled attention is not that fast. It takes some time for the elaboration, for the elaborative work of our brains. So yeah, the two modalities. I was up to add that most of the people, it means that over 70 or 75% of people are dominantly visual type. So the vast majority of the information from the environment is perceived in a visual way. So basically, we tend to believe our eyes primarily. Basically, we receive the most information from the world through our eyes. And it's important because we will deal now with the visual part of communication. Speaking about attention, there is a model which was elaborated by Simon in 1971. It's the model of attention economy. which might be important for all of you as future entrepreneurs because it monetizes the human attention. Simon showed that attention can be defined by economic standards. It can be translated as an economical good. When you catch your customer's attention, it can be monetized. And then in 2002, Davenport and Beck added something else to this model. They stated that economic models can be built on the human attention. In this term, once you can catch the attention of your customers for a couple of seconds, for half a minute, you win the game. You do your best as an enterprise or a businessman, because this is the most important part, to give something and get the attention of your customer. Otherwise, you will sink down and no one will care about your entrepreneurship. And it's true in case of advertisements, in case of, in grants, applications, in business presentations, or even in the on-the-spot selling. So in your physical store, you have to grab the attention with tables, with displays, with flyers, etc., etc. So everything which is catchy, visually attractive, can catch the attention, and that is the crucial part of the business in terms of the marketing communication, of course. And there we have these 3 business communication standards. This is maybe a bit theoretical and a bit too abstract, but I'm going to explain it in a couple of minutes. We have a conceptual standard, a perceptual standard, and a semantic standard. The conceptual aspects are described the way that you have a goal and the message of your business communication. You have to observe, is it understandable what I try to communicate with my data to my clients? The second one is the consistent structure. So the question is whether I give a hierarchical and total picture about my data, which I try to present my customers or even decision makers when my enterprise applies for a grant, for example. From time to time, you will get into situations as an entrepreneur where you have to prove that you are successful, you have valid plans, you have relevant plans for the future, your aims about your business are feasible, are eligible for granting this with big money or something. So you have to be consistent and you have to provide the total picture. That's the conceptual background of the business communication. The second one is a perceptual aspect. Firstly, you have to express yourself in a visual way properly and examine whether do you use your proper visualization. I will give some hints and tips for this. And this might be interesting for you because the bad examples are the best examples, I have to say, and I will show you tons of bad examples. Moreover, you have to apply a simple but rich structure. So you have to ask from yourself whether you give a hierarchical and total picture about the data again, but this time from the aspect of the human perception. Is it easily digestible for your clients, easily digestible for your business partners or for the decision makers? Is it hands-on? Do I understand it easily when I take just one look at your graphs, diagrams, at your visual material, or not? That is a crucial question. And thirdly, the semantic aspect of the business communication is the question of unity. So do I give a united, consequent wording, a consequent set of visual elements? Do I present my data properly and understandably? The semantic side means the meaning. When something is semantically correct, it means that it has the proper meaning and it's inevitable. So it's easily understandable and you can understand it just one way and not in potentially different ways. So you have to be unique and united. Okay. And let's begin with the presentation's first important part, which is the outline. And here we have a basic rule which also relates to the human attention, the nature of the human attention. It means that you have to repeat something 7 times, at least 7 times, in order to be understood and memorized. So once if I mention something one time, it just flies away. You will forget it instantly. It's not remarkable. If I repeat it one time, so you hear it 2 times, maybe I will get a bigger chance to you to be attentive. Oh, it seems that it's a repetition. You have already mentioned this. It's the second time I hear it. Okay, but after 2 times, you can easily forget it again. If I hear something 3 times in a row, so if I repeat myself, if I repeat myself, if I repeat myself once again, you will have a bigger chance to memorize this. But the optimal amount of repetitions is 7. Imagine that you have 15 minutes to convince your business partner to support your idea with a financial grant, for example. You have to state your business idea one time in the beginning of your presentation. In the end of the presentation, you have to repeat it. And in the middle of your presentation, you have to put it in the display and explain it in details. It's 3 repeats. In the beginning, in the middle of the presentation, and in the end of the presentation. It's 3. But try to organize your speech the way that you mention, you say your business idea at least 7 times on different points of your speech, but keep it repeating all the time. That's important because after hearing this 7 times, you increase the chance that your client or your business partner will remember of this detail. That is how human brain works. It's so natural that we have to hear something several times to get it memorized. So it's the repeat 7 times rule. The second important thing is the introductory insight into the content. If you start to speak about something, you have to provide a framework about how it looks like, what is the main message, so what will be repeated 7 times, and you have to provide some summary, some final words in the end of your presentation. It is at least 3 repeats, and if as I mentioned before, during the explanation of your main message, you will be able to repeat it several times more times, and that's how you will get at least 7 repeats. Okay, I won't repeat myself anymore. I will go on with my presentation. If you have a bigger amount of time, if you have several minutes to speak, as you can remember, 12 minutes, 15 minutes is too long for the human brain to be attentive for such a long time span. So you have to begin straight to the point. You have to begin with your solution. If you present your business idea in front of decision makers or in front of your future clients, you have to begin with the idea how you provide solution. Why is it good for the world that you made this enterprise? For example, in case of a cake store or a bakery, for example, you have to define why is it good to have, let's say, Ukrainian bakery stuff in Paks, so, or in any Hungarian cities. So why is it unique? What problem do you solve with this? And it's true in case of every other kinds of small enterprises. Focus on the solution, because we don't have much time. The clients are impatient and they seek for the point. Why do I have to listen to you? What can you help me as an entrepreneur? Why is it good for me to be your client? That must be answered honestly. In the first round, you have to answer this for yourself, in your mind, inside. And afterwards, you have to answer this publicly in your business presentation or in your marketing communication activity. So focus on the solution. As the second step, there can come the description of the problem. And if you have more time, when you're lucky, you can dive deeper into the details. But the details are not that interesting for the public. So if you only have just one single sentence, you have to begin with the solution. And you have to convince your audience by this one sentence, focusing on the solution. And here we go. Let's begin with the best practices and the worst practices of diagrams. Two main rules concerning diagrams: you have to be punctual and you have to be nice. In this project, we try to concentrate, beside many other things, the intercultural differences of the customers. At this point, I have to say that most people in Central and Eastern Europe just work the same way. We like the well-prepared persons when they hold a presentation. We all like the data-based, data-driven proofs. We are convinced when it's not just an empty marketing slogan, but we can see something which is successful. So we work basically the same in all around the countries of the Visegrad countries. So all the diagrams must be punctual and must be pretty nice, neat, and well cut. Here we have the pairs of diagrams. On the left side, you will always see the worst practice, which is lined straight, how to avoid this. And on the right side, you will see always the best practice or the good practice. So you have to be visually consistent. Try to avoid using different types of symbols, logos, etc., etc. So you have to be united in terms of your visual presence in your presentation. When you start your venture, when you start your enterprise, the first stage that is hard to tackle is that you have to spend some money on a professional designer or a graphic designer, I mean, or web designer. Otherwise, if you are not an artist yourself, you will get lost in the design. It is a money that is worth spending on the beginning of your entrepreneurship, because if you have a good set of logos, symbols, if you choose the proper colors for your company, it is going to be fruitful, both in terms of creating your own homepage and in terms of using, the print material like flyers or displays in your store, and even in your presentations as well. Okay, the second one is the consistency of illustrations. Here you also have to avoid the different types of symbol sets. So if you are allowed to use the unit or united set of logos, just try to do it so. Otherwise, it will be confusing and, too colorful or inconsistent, which hurts the eyes, basically. And it's a subliminal thing. I don't really know, and I cannot formulate the argument why something is unpleasant for my eyes. I just feel that it's not okay visually. And if I take a look behind my feelings, I realize that it's because it's not a unit of symbols. It's so different, it's so confusing and chaotic that it hurts the brain. So all the time, try to be simpler and try to be unite. Okay, the consistent illustrations. After this, I draw your attention to the importance of highlighting. All the time, when you can apply a highlighting, feel free to use it. On the right side, you see here this highlight with the 18%. You are allowed and you have the potential to direct the visual perception of your client or your decision maker or your partner on the things that you find the most important. So feel free to highlight the details which are designed by you, which you think the most important are. And don't hesitate to write it down with numbers or letters and highlight it even with a vivid color. This time you are allowed to apply some strong color. So it can underline the most important statement in your presentation. After highlighting, let's take a look at diagrams, the columns, and the circles. This cake diagram or circle diagram is often applied, but the point is that the human brain tackles with some problems while perceiving such circle diagrams, because the circular shape is challenging for our brains. If you have to compare the laptops, the monitors, the printers, and the softwares, the proportions on the Buddha side and the Pest side, it's just an example for two circle diagrams and two column diagrams. You will find it more difficult to compare these data on circle diagrams than in case of the column diagrams. Below, it's much easier to compare the data at first sight, because I just take a look at the column diagrams and I instantly see that the Buddha side has more laptops than Pest side and more softwares than Pest side. And I instantly see that on the Buddha side, there are less printers than on Pest side and more monitors than on Pest side. But if I try to compare these circle diagrams, it requires my even more controlled attention because it's not that hands-on. The secret is the human brain. We seek for the straight shapes all the time. It's easier to elaborate which is straight in comparison with the curving shapes. So that's why it's not really advisable to apply circle diagrams, except some well-defined cases, but try to narrow down to column diagrams, try to apply that. Sometimes the diagrams can be misleading. It represents, I will translate the unknown Hungarian words. It represents the population of a fictitious, I don't really know, city or village in the different years. And it is depicted in a circle diagram. You know, in 1990, the population was 4,262, etc., etc. What is the problem with this diagram? What do you think? What can be the problem? I'm just trying to test your awareness, whether you are here also in mind or just your bodies. Is there somebody who tries to answer the question?
Looks like all of them are the same. I don't know.
Yeah, visually, there is no bigger difference between the sections. Yeah, so it seems as if we just separated it to 5 equal major parts, and that's all. Yeah, it's one problem. Yeah, it's true.
And maybe the second problem is with the color, because it's hard to watch, more dark colors, and it seems that something wrong with this sense of color here.
Yeah, the colors. Maybe it's a question of taste. You know, I personally like these colors, but there is a real problem
Lines are not
with these
straight.
ones, because this purple and this purplish other one are so similar.
It's not straight,
can
yes.
be- Yep. Sorry.
It's not straight.
Yeah, it's not straight, true, but the biggest problem is that it's completely meaningless to figure something like this in a circle diagram, because if I apply a circle diagram, eventually I have to have a summary of the numbers. But here, in this case, a simple column diagram row could be applied, because it just depicts the different years and the population data, the number of people in the population in different years. But it's completely meaningless to put them next to each other in a circle, because there are no actual proportions. So I don't really know whether you know what I mean. These are not relative numbers being put them next to each other, because the population of 1990 embeds the population of 1991. The people who were there in 1992 a good part of people were there in 1991, etc., etc. So it's basically it's a time row, and it's meaningless to act like it would be a summary of something. So if I add the numbers together, I just get a meaningless number, a meaningless summary, because the nature of the population is not something like I can add from year to year. I just observe the change of the population from year to year, but it's meaningless to add them together in 5 years perspective, for example. So yeah, and many other examples could be provided why and how it can be misleading for the visitors, for the audience, for the participants. According to the scaling question, and as for the scaling question, here we can see another problem on the left side of the diagram. Because if you take a look at the categories, you will see that the lowest one is between, let's say, 16 years and 30 years. The second one is a range between 31 and 35. The third one is 36 and it goes till 40. And here we have another 5 years slot. And afterwards, finally, we have in the upper line 15 years time span. So these are no equal categories. The lowest one embraces 15 years, then 5 years, 5 years, 5 years, and finally 15 years again. And it's quite misleading to depict something like this, because if I want to be respectfully punctual, I have to display this in regular 5 years time spans in 5 years categories. So you can see the difference on the right. It's quite differ from the left side, and it's way more understandable at first sight. It's a question of scaling. And then the diagrams about scaling just goes further and further. If you put next to each other, if you put these two diagrams next to each other, I mean the sales in million US dollars and the profit in million US dollars, you will see that the columns, the size or the height of the columns are nearly the same, but the number which is represented by the columns are completely different. So at first sight, we see as if the 52 would be as much high as the 10, which is completely meaningless. The eyes of the audience identifies these numbers as equals. And okay, these are two completely different diagrams, but once they are put next to each other, we are instantly misled. The punctual version would be on the right, like this, that the relative size of these columns, the relative height of these columns, must represent the amount of money or the number which is represented by the column. So the 52 must be at least 5 times higher or bigger visually than the column for 10. And the 55 must be 5.5 times higher than the column of 10 visually as well. Otherwise, it's just a lie, just a visual fraud, which is committed against our audience. So it's completely misleading. As for the scaling, furthermore, we can apply different scales. Just to cite two examples, it's kind of a COVID statistic from Hungary from 2022 or 2021, maybe. On the left side, you see a linear scale. On the right side, you see another mathematical solution, which is a logarithmic scale. I won't bore you with the difference, the mathematical difference of linear and logarithmic scaling, but you have to know that these diagrams are the same. They are both valid representation of the same data set, but only on the left side it's linearly represented, and on the right side you see it logarithmically represented. If you are aware of the scaling on the left here in the axis y, and if you take a look at the scaling on the right diagram, you will realize that these are completely different, and therefore in case of the linear scale, you see a curve like this, and in the case of the logarithmic scale, you see a curve which is more calming, and it seems that the COVID infections are reduced and they don't grow anymore. But it's misleading because they do grow, or they did grow, but it's represented another way mathematically. And it's visually misleading. Okay, that's all about scaling. What to do when the diagrams put cutting and skipping in themselves? Yeah, you know, if I don't have enough room either on my presentation, either on my slide, or on my don't know, flyer or web page or something, so I have to spare the space, they often apply this kind of solution. Let's say this is the 0 point in the left below corner, and and here's a cut, and wow, we are here at 30 and a big step and 35. But this way I am misleaded again visually, because yeah, take a look at the solution below. Between the 18 and the 73, there is naturally a much bigger difference in terms of the height of the columns. But here it seems that 73 is just approximately 2 times higher than 18. And at first sight, it's just completely meaningless. So try to avoid cuttings and skippings like this. Instead of this, you can apply point diagrams or matrix diagrams, or you can apply these visual tricks. This is a creative solution. Try to provide the proper length for the diagram, for the column, and if it's too high, just apply a curve. There are some softwares and programs which can draw something like this. It requires some IT skill, of course, but it's not a problem. You can learn it. As for the proportions, if you try to demonstrate, let's say, the growth of your business, you can tell this story with nice symbols, for example, with this, this bottle, baby bottle. But this way, it's a bit misconducting, because I'm perplexed by the bottle itself, and I cannot concentrate on the numbers. Here we have some problem with the proportion again, with the relative height of the columns. Instead of this, you should apply regular columns, and if you want to apply something which is creative, feel free to apply this symbol, but don't use and overuse this symbol in all of your diagrams. There's another thing which should be avoided besides the circle diagrams, and it's the web diagram. You have already definitely seen something like this. If I try to demonstrate many things in one single diagram, I can apply this web diagram form, but it's hard to understand. It's not misleading, really. I would say that it's quite comfortable, and in scientific papers, I often see things like this. But it's hard to tackle the problem. It's hard to get it at first sight. So try to avoid this and try to switch this to column diagrams again. You can apply even two different factors to the same diagram. One is blue, the second is gray in this example, and you can figure out how to depict X, Y, and Z. This can be attached below, and you are ready without any web, without any complicated diagram. So try to simplify everything. This is my actual message here. The diagrams of correlations, when you, for example, when you try to show the growth of your profit during the time, when you try to demonstrate the sales capacity of your enterprise, you can depict this in complicated ways, or you can apply trend lines in your diagrams. This leads the eyes of the audience, and it really gets easier to catch the point, how it grows, how the profit grows, how the net sales increase, etc., etc. So it's just a friendly move towards your audience to make it easier to understand. And if you combine two kinds of data, you can apply column diagrams and point diagrams at the same time. You can apply something like this on the screen. This is an overlay chart with columns and lines using the same value axis. So the y-axis is the same in case of the two trend lines, so to say. It's the maximum which is acceptable in terms of the complication of different data in one diagram. So don't overcomplicate this. This is the maximum. And finally, it's an often reoccurring question whether I have to say goodbye in the end of my typical presentations or not. And here are different schools. If you have to hold a presentation, if you have to pitch your business or something, I'm of the opinion that we don't have to apply a thank you for your attention slide in the end, because instead of this, you should concentrate on the solution and you should concentrate on the next steps. So if you hold a business presentation, you won't finish this with this kind of thank you for your attention slide. It's boring, it's a commonplace in the business sphere. Instead of this, you should make something like this. And now we should decide on the next steps. 1, 2, 3. There are 3 bullet points. There are highlighted most important takeaways. Or instead of all of this, you can say something with your mouth, with your words. And I hope that I could get across that we have to. And then the audience says, thank you so much. And it doesn't really require any slides. So this is about goodbye. Oh, yeah. And one more thing. which is maybe the most important. You have to be aware of the fact that the human attention remembers of the very first impression during a meeting or a presentation or a discussion or a negotiation. So we tend to remember of the very, very first thing which happens in the situation. And the second is the last one, the very last thing that happens. So why I chose Steve Jobs for this slide? I chose him because the head of the Apple Incorporation often applied this trick in his business presentations. He talked for several minutes or even for half an hour, and in the end of his presentation, he acted like he forgot something. Oh, and one more thing, he said, and there was the point where the ultimate point, the peak point of the presentation came. And this one more thing is that we always have to weigh the point of our presentation, the ultimate takeaway message or the most important part, right to the end of the presentation. Because that is the point which will be stored in the memory of the audience, which will be remembered all the time. So the introduction is one of the most important part, and how I and what I say as the last words of my presentation. So repeat the takeaway message, underline your central idea once again. Don't forget to highlight your biggest idea in the very end of the presentation. Now I break this rule because I have one more test, attention test. I will apply my presentation to Moodle, to our course platform, and you will be able to open it and have this short game. It's about 1 or 10 minutes long, but it's a big lesson to learn. And now I break another rule because I have this thank you for your attention slide, which can be avoided, which is not that relevant, as I mentioned before. And now I stop sharing my screen and I'm open to your potential questions. So it's a Q&A session now. If you have any questions, concerns, remarks, notices, or anything else, I'm open. I'll try to answer your questions if I can. The biggest silence I've ever heard. Okay, no wonder. But I happily realized that there are 9 participants, which means there are at least 7 participants in the meeting now, which is a higher amount of people than I expected today. It's cool.
Okay, well, I have one question, and sorry for silence because I just thought of my question not to be so easy. It
No
was not so
problem.
easy. Okay, so thank you very much for some tips that you provided us during this lecture. It will be obviously and certainly used in our presentations, but could you please give us recommendations on maybe some links or maybe to some materials which could help us improve our skills of presentation? Why I'm asking about this, because every time I even prepare presentation, you know, we are drafting big memorandums to our clients, but the essence should be given them in the presentation. And it is really very hard, and it's important to give him the core information through these slides using different pictures and other items.
Okay.
It will be very useful to know where to see these materials and to learn.
Absolutely. And thank you. I'm really grateful for this question, because I wanted to add that I will upload some supplementary materials on Moodle as well. It includes the often cited International Business Communication Standards, which is quite a long set of recommendations for the visual part of the presentations. Much of the slides, much of the examples stem from this document, by the way. So I'm going to upload it and share it with all of you on Moodle on the one hand. Secondly, I will provide some supplementary about the reasonable argumentation and the modern rhetoric which can be applied in your presentations. This is another official resource from Miller, among others, this book deals with the ways of thinking and the ways of reasoning, the ways of argumentation during your arguments, your negotiations, and your presentation. Thirdly, I give now an overall recommendation for the presentations. As you mentioned, really the crucial part is to have a kind of an executive summary, which is really hands-on, small, short, and understandable. The best way to build up your business presentations is the way that one slide, one sentence. If you just click through the slides and you say these one sentences for each slides, you have to get a complete train of thoughts, so a complete story, if you read together these one sentences. And after having these one statement for each slides, you have to begin to wrap out, or unbox your sentences. So you have to be able to summarize each of your slides in one sentence. You have to be able to speak about your each slides for half a minute and prepare the presentation so that you have to speak about each of your slides for 3 minutes. And it won't depend from the time frame, because if I have 15 slides and if I get half an hour, I will be able to speak about 2 or 3 minutes per slides. But if I get only 5 minutes for my 15 slides, I am prepared to tell half a minute about each of my slides. And if I only get 1 single minute, I just click the slides and the one sentence, it's 1.5 or 2 minutes. So it's not that long. It's a complex structure. So we have the slides, and after the slides, we have the one sentence, the half minute, and the 3 to 5 minutes per slides. That's the best way to build it up, basically. It's my personal recommendation, and it always works because it gets me independent of the time frame. Because it's an often cited failure that if I prepare with my 15 minutes presentation and the environment doesn't support this, because the decision maker is so busy that he tells me, you have 5 minutes or 2 minutes to get me enthusiastic and to persuade me, then you have hard times because you prepared for 15 minutes and you only have 2. But this technique, how you build it up with 1 sentence, half minute, and 5 minutes per slide, you can apply for the proper, or you can, get used to the proper time frame and the limit, and it makes it reasonable. Yeah. So it's
Okay,
my
thank you
personal.
very much.
You're really
It's very
welcome.
useful. I'm very, very grateful. I have another question if we are not short of
Yeah.
time.
No.
Okay, how
That's why we are
how
here.
could you comment if it is relevant to include, in particular in presentation some jokes, or you should do it while you are talking about the statements? Because
Yeah, the slippery
we
slope.
don't want the presentation to be boring, and sometimes it is really helpful to include some jokes. So whether it is useful to do it in presentation or just in speech.
Yeah. As I'm hearing you speaking, you seem to be a vivid person, a positive character. And according to this, I suppose that you should feel free to apply some jokes because it's so natural for your character personally. But it's quite a hard time to see somebody who plans the jokes. So if it's prepared, if it's artificial, you know what I mean? So if it's directly embedded into the presentation, here comes the point where I have to tell a joke because it's planned. Well, that's just terrible. So the point is not the amount of jokes, it's not the question of preparation. I think the real question is whether I am spontaneous enough, or whether it seems to be natural, fit to my personal character to tell jokes during my presentation. I like to be, a bit easygoing during my presentations, especially in my mother tongue. In English, it's always a bit more complicated, but so feel free to embed jokes, but don't plan these or over plan these. And always be aware that the jokes must fit to your character. So don't overdo this. That's the point. Be spontaneous. But it is a useful tool in terms of the rhetorical performance in your presentations.
Thank you very much.
You're really welcome. I'm curious whether we have any more remarks, comments, notices, amendments, needs, questions.
I just wanted to tell you that thank you so much for your presentation. I have one question, and as far as I know, you were a professor at Corvinus, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and do you teach international students or only Hungarian?
Yep. Sometimes I teach international students. Good 2/3 of our students are international. So yeah, I have classes with them as well.
I'm a student at Corvinus, and I'm just curious about it. And which subject do you teach?
For instance, in the communication and media studies, we have the media communication course, we have business communication, business negotiations. On the master's level, I often teach international negotiations. Basically, these are my subjects, but it varies from year to year. So
okay, thank
every
you so
year is a
much.
bit different. I hope we will meet.
Thank you.